It seems to have been a mistake to believe that the woman medical student, no matter how capable and earnest she was in her medical studies, could afterward, in all cases, take the same position relatively in the medical world that the man doctor could, said Dr. Hugh Cabot. Many other people agreed with Cabot, believing that women were incapable of working in the medical field. In early American society, only men were permitted into medical colleges, forming a barrier for women's rights in medicine, until, in 1849, Elizabeth Blackwell cracked the barrier by graduating from Geneva Medical College and becoming the first American woman to receive a medical degree. Although after Blackwell's graduation, all medical schools closed their doors to women, her later actions helped reopen the crack that they had sealed on the barrier in women's rights and society. Elizabeth Blackwell, Cracking the Medical Gender Barrier, by Mia Tursman and Colleen Madion. Chapter 1. A Barrier in Women's Medical Education. In the 19th century, women had limited rights and were considered below men. Parents kept their daughters home because of the belief that their main roles in life were to be a mother and wife, jobs that required little education. All women were denied higher education because it was believed dangerous due to a woman's fragile mental state. Therefore, many women were unable to support themselves, and in turn they were practically owned by their husbands. Many women wanted to speak out for their rights, including Blackwell. However, they were unable to due to their level of power. I wish I could devise some good way of maintaining myself, but the restrictions which confine my dear sex render all my aspirations useless, said Blackwell. One of these restrictions included not being able to gain a medical degree or any form of higher education. Some of the few jobs women could get were teaching, domestic service for wealthier households, and home-based work. Elizabeth Blackwell went into teaching because it was one of the few jobs women could get, and at the time she didn't think of ever going into the medical field. Blackwell said, "I hated everything connected with the body and could not bear the sight of a medical book. My favorite studies were history and metaphysics, and the thought of dwelling on the physical structure of the body and its various elements filled me with disgust." However, a dying friend soon convinced her, saying that her worst sufferings might have been spared if she had been treated by a woman doctor. This caused Elizabeth to rethink her original opposition. Attracted by the challenge, Blackwell consulted with several physicians known by her family. They told her it was a fine idea but impossible. It was too expensive, and such education was not available to women. However, Elizabeth decided to take on the challenge and apply to medical colleges. Chapter 2. Cracking the Barrier. Elizabeth Blackwell applied to 30 medical colleges, including all of the schools in Pennsylvania, New York, and even 12 schools in the northeastern states, hoping to gain entry in one. She was rejected by the first 29, but eventually gained access into Geneva Medical College. Her acceptance letter read that one of the national principles of a Republican government is the universal education of both sexes, that to every branch of scientific education the door should be open equally to all, that the application of Elizabeth Blackwell to become a member of our class meet our entire approbation, and in extending our unanimous irritation, we pledge ourselves that no conflict of ours shall cause her to regret her attendance at this institution. This letter shows how the faculty at Geneva Medical College believed in women becoming doctors or other branches of science education. This is important because it shows an ally to Elizabeth, and most schools in this time don't believe that a woman could gain higher education successfully. Although Blackwell was accepted into Geneva, because many people still didn't believe in women's rights, she wasn't able to do certain things while she was there. While she was able to gain an education, she was still discriminated against by other male students there. A student later wrote that the faculty opposed her admission but felt they couldn't turn down an otherwise qualified woman. Her professor, John Webster, even suggested that she stay away from certain lectures. However, she replied that she only wanted to be treated like any other student. Eventually, she gained support from the students, faculty, and the townspeople, and graduated first in her class in 1849. Even though Blackwell attended college and graduated successfully, the dean, Charles A. Lee, stated that inconveniences attending the admission of females to all lectures in a medical school are so great that he will feel compelled on all future occasions to oppose such a practice. While Charles Lee approves of her and believes she was very successful, he saw the bias against her and believed it was best to not suggest this career to other women. After graduation, Elizabeth went on to work in clinics in Paris and London for a few years. While she was there, she also studied midwifery at La Maternité, where she removed purulent ophthalmia from a young patient. However, while treating a patient, some of the poison leaked into her eye and she lost part of her eyesight, ending her career becoming a surgeon. Due to this inconvenience, Elizabeth had to move back to New York and find a job. When she arrived in New York, she found that no clinics or hospitals would hire her. She was then forced to form the New York Infirmary for Women and Children in 1856 with the help of her sister Emily Blackwell and her friend Dr. Marie Zakrzewska. Chapter 3. How this event impacted others. Elizabeth Blackwell's actions not only inspired people but also changed many perspectives, good and bad. The Dean of Geneva, Charles Lee, shows his confidence in her and stated in his valedictory address, "God speed her, then in her errand of mercy, crown her efforts with abundant success." Elizabeth had an impact on many people, including this man. Although he may have had an opposition against her at first, he now sees that she is hardworking and bound to do great things. However, not everyone believed that Elizabeth had done great things for society. Due to opposing opinions stated in the Boston Medical and Surgical Journal, Charles Lee was encouraged to not permit any woman after Elizabeth. He wrote, "While we hold our opinion, we at the same time feel bound to say that the inconveniences attending the admission of females to all lectures and medical school are so great that we will feel compelled on all future occasions to oppose such a practice, although by doing so we may be subjected to a large amount of inconsistency." While Elizabeth had an impact on Charles Lee, he still felt compelled due to the bias to not allow women doctors. Many other colleges held the same viewpoint and weren't enthusiastic about women being doctors. Due to this barrier, in 1868, Elizabeth Blackwell and her sister Emily formed the Women's Medical College of the New York Infirmary. The college provided public lectures on hygiene, health care, and campaigned for better preventive medicines. It also provided a place for women who wanted to be physicians but couldn't get a job. Not only did Elizabeth impact people around the 19th century, she also continued to impact people past her time period and death. Similar to men and women during her time, people after her time also had positive and negative things to say about her actions. Alice Stone Blackwell, Elizabeth's niece, is one of the people truly inspired by her actions. It is a great thing for your nieces to have in you and Aunt Emily, an example to live up to, and I think that the greatest gift that a person can give to another is inspiration. And I thank you for it and for all that you have done for humanity in general and women in particular. Alice was inspired by all Elizabeth had done and believed that she had a huge impact on humanity and women's rights. In 60 years, the number of women physicians has increased to something much over 7,400. If we had listened to the advice of those who discouraged us, as we would have never gotten on at all. But that very tenacity of purpose and willingness to combat all things to fight even, of which doctors haven't deployed our lack, has enabled us to not only hold our own, but to increase in numbers," said Dr. King. After Elizabeth had graduated, the number of women doctors has increased tremendously. Even though several people criticized Elizabeth's actions, she also had many supporters. King is explaining that if she and her followers had listened to the others, women's rights might not have been where it was in 1915. Nonetheless, even in 1915, after all that women had done to gain support, some people still held a prejudice against them. One of these men was Richard Cabot, who, when interviewed, stated, "The great majority of women doctors that I have known have either been disappointed or dissatisfied with women. Few have been successful, and the majority give up the battle. General practice and research work should be avoided by women doctors." Along with many others, Cabot believed that women were not suited for doctors, because he believes that they have been disappointed and dissatisfied with their career choice. He also thinks that it is too difficult for women and believes that it should be avoided. This information shows how Blackwell has had a lasting impact on all of these people, whether it be good or bad. Even though women's rights have come a long way from the 19th century to the early 2000s, there is a significant gap of inequality between women and men. An example of this would be the pay gap between the two sexes. Today, women are still working hard to close this gap in inequality against women. Elizabeth Blackwell is an example of a strong, brave person who is willing to withstand the backlash and overcome her enemies in order to find equality for all of humanity. Societal barriers still exist today. In order to break these down, it will take brave people like Elizabeth Blackwell to overcome the injustice.